Hi, everybody. Welcome to this afternoon's event. My name is Allison Bainbridge. I will be introducing our guest speakers today. I am so thrilled. It's an honor to host this event this afternoon. Personally, I'm a runner turned hiker. My running days are a little bit behind me now, but when I mentioned that to a coworker that I was hosting this event, she got so excited as if I was introducing a rock star celebrity, which he is in a lot of worlds. And she said that Dean is so inspiring that he is an inspiration to the idea of putting one step forward and then, that takes you to where the journey begins. So, there's a lot of people out there, I think, that are really inspired by Dean's work. He's a New York Times bestselling author and an ultra marathoning legend. He has pushed his body and mind to inconceivable limits, from running in the shoe melting heat of Death Valley to the lung freezing cold of the South Pole. He's raced and competed across the globe, and once ran 50 marathons in 50 states in 50 consecutive days. I mean, it just blows my mind. That's a superhero to me. In A Runner's High, Karnazes chronicles his extraordinary adventures leading up to his return to the Western State 100-mile endurance run in his mid-50s after first completing the race decades ago. For Dean, the running experience is about the runner and the trail. It's not the sum of achievements, but a story that continues to be told each day with each step. A Runner's High is at once an endorphin fueled adventure and a love letter to the sport from one of its most celebrated ambassadors that will leave both casual and serious runners cheering. Dean is a two-time New York Times bestselling author and an icon in the running world. Men's Health called him one of the fittest people on the planet. Time magazine named Dean as one of the top 100 most influential people in the world. An internationally recognized endurance athlete, he has pushed his mind and body, as I said, to incomprehensible limits. David Lipsik is a very long time Tamalpan going back to the 1980s when he ran his first TCRS races while home from college. He's grown up with Tamalpa and likes to think of himself as one of the younger old timers. I know that feeling. His consecutive Dipsy streak is going strong at 27. He discovered running in high school at Redwood, a local high school, and continued competitively at UC Santa Barbara. And he now finds himself in his mid-50s, and his love for running on Marin's beautiful trails is just as strong. His favorite trails include Tucker, Yolanda, Northside, Matt Davis, and Coastal, for those of you who are local. His favorite races are Cool Canyon 50K, the Dipsy and Double D, and Rogers Super Bowl race. When not running, he's coaching and teaching special ed at local Miller Creek Middle School. He lives in San Rafael with his wife and soon to graduate son. So it is such an honor to have both of you here. Thank you all for joining us, our Book Passage customers, our people who have found out about our events during this last year and join us regularly. We really appreciate your support. And without further ado, here you go.
So I don't know if I should just jump in here and start. And
yeah, well, I mean, I guess I'll say thank you for that gracious introduction. And I like learning about David, and I'm just honored to be here with you. So,
well, likewise, Dean. I'm enamored with you, Dean. And yes, thank you very much for that very gracious introduction too. I first learned of Dean probably about 25 years ago when I was on a team of 12 people, myself and 11 others, running the Calistoga to Santa Cruz Marathon. And it was such a daunting, the Calistoga to Santa Cruz, cross California state run. It was a 192-mile relay race. And I think as I was running it, we learned that there was a guy that was doing the whole thing by himself. And not only that, but I think he ran to the start from Marin County, another 30 miles and then ran home. And it was just mind-boggling to me that anybody would do that whole thing. And then I think I kind of followed Dean throughout your career as you continued to run more and more ultra races and run the 50 marathons in 50 days across 50 states and every continent and in the world. And I'm just totally honored by who you are and the fact that you're a member of our local grassroots Tamalpa Runners Club, and that I've had the pleasure of running with you a few times on some of our Tamalpa group runs and our turkey trots.
Well, I mean, you know, that 200-mile 12-person relay race, actually 199 mile 12-person relay race that you referred to, the relay, I ran it solo because I don't have 11 friends left. That's what it came down to. But I love that race, and yeah, the race director thought I was crazy when I said I wanted to just do the whole thing as a team of one, but he let me enter, and I think I've done it 10 or 11 times now, and it's so much fun.
Have you done Hood to Coast individually?
I did. I've done Hood to Coast. I did on my birthday, I think in maybe 2006 or 2005, 2005.
Wow. Yeah. What other relay races have you run solo?
I've done one of the Ragnar relays solo, but other than that, well, I did the Christmas relay. You know, the Christmas relay around Lake Merced.
Yeah.
I mean, I think that was like a 4-mile loop. So
that must have been short for you, but unless you ran there and home. So I thought that was very interesting in your book that you said you don't own a car and you've never owned a car. Is that still true today?
Well, I used to own a car,
okay.
And I actually was sponsored by Volkswagen, but I felt really guilty because I was never using the car. So I gave him the car back, and I ended that. You know, it just didn't feel like a good, authentic fit. I think I drove the car like 2,000 miles in 1 year, and that was maybe 10 or 11 years ago as well. And I never replaced it, and just started running everywhere. You know, here in Marin, where we live, everything's within running distance. You know, it's easier these days with Lyft and Uber, but before that, you know, I just carried a backpack and would, you know, run to the grocery store, run to the bank, run errands, run to the post office. So yeah, I never needed a car.
So let's talk about your book. I really enjoyed it, and I've heard from a few other people in our running club who've also really enjoyed it, and maybe watching here too. And I probably wouldn't have picked it out myself, but getting to know you and knowing what you've written before, I really want to learn more about you and read your other books, and I've really enjoyed reading it. It really grew on me. I want to know, just kind of from your perspective, we got the setting, we got the plot. Can you tell I'm an English teacher in middle school? I want to know, what message do you want people to take home from your book?
You know, I think running is worthwhile in itself. That just the very act of running can be play, and you don't have to wear a watch. Every run doesn't have to be quantified and measured. That running is just a pleasurable activity on its own, and that you can love running just for the sheer joy of running. You know, a lot of us were kind of forced to run when we were younger, as if we were being punished or something. But now we choose to run. And why do we choose to run? You know, I spent 240 pages trying to explain why that urge exists. You know, life is so easy these days. Why do something hard like running? And I think we do something hard because life is easy, and we long for something that's strenuous and challenging. And I think that's why we run.
It's interesting because you hear from so many people saying, I hate running, it hurts, or I've never had a running high, or how far do you have to run, or what do you have to run to get a running high? And I don't know if my consecutive years, 42 years of running, you know, beats the number of miles that you've run in your life. Probably not. But I tend to get a runner's high just about every run because I love it, and it's so freeing. And I love in your book how you talk about it's like an escape mechanism too.
Yeah, no, I mean, I literally went running right before this interview, and yeah, I'm, you know how you feel. The world just looks better. Everything looks brighter.
Yeah, my wife says I'm a better person when I come home after a run than when I left.
My wife forces me out the door sometimes. Like, you're grumpy, go running.
Mine too. Yeah. If I haven't run for like, I don't know about you, I'm probably 5-6 days a week, but if I ever go 2 or 3 days, God forbid, without running, I'm climbing the walls.
Well, I think a lot of the people watching this or listening to this, however you're consuming this interview, are probably nodding their heads going, yeah, I can relate. I'm the same way.
I ran this morning at 6 a.m. and saw the sunrise. And, you know, you say, you know, we talk about this world about, I love in your book how you talk about we're too domesticated. We've gotten just too set in our rhythms and our patterns. And running is such, getting back to that, you know, kind of escapism, it's such kind of a time out to reflect and look back.
Yeah, I agree. And, you know, the other thing with you and me is that we have a relationship with nature, right? I mean, we go running on these trails and we're as comfortable out in nature as we are, you know, in front of a group. I'm actually more comfortable in nature by myself than I am with people. Not many people have a relationship with nature. I mean, when you look at how most people live their lives, it's primarily inside. It's indoors, it's in a car.
That's why I'm outside right now. I've been inside a classroom all day.
Yeah, you've been, yeah, exactly. But I mean, you love to get outside in nature and it's rejuvenating, right? It's like brings you, it's a rebirth to go for a 10-mile run on Yolanda, right?
It's rejuvenating. It's a, you know, even if you run Yolanda, for example, some of the trails I've run for 42 years. Sometimes when I run Yolanda, for example, which is a trail here in the Marin County in the watershed, I think to myself, I've probably been on this trail maybe 2,000 times, maybe up to 3,000 times, but it's different every single time. And the views, and that can be said for many places where you run, are just, the views are spectacular. You see a different view of the mountain or a lake or a river or a stream or a newt, for example.
Well, I mean, I've run on all 7 continents twice, and I've seen the world at 6 miles an hour. And there's no more intimate way to see a place and to learn about a place than to run through it. So not only here on the trails in Marin is that true, but, you know, in Central Asia, in Australia, you know, and all over Europe and South Africa, I could go on and on, but, you know, I've run in places all across the world, and that experience is the same anywhere. It's just a wonderful experience, and it's something that I personally live for, and it sounds like you're the same way.
I wanted to also ask you if you could talk about the community, about so much of our running, and like you, I do a lot of solo running, but I also have a couple groups. I've got a Sunday group, I've got a Saturday group, and I've got a Tuesday group. What is the community, you know, especially when you're running an event like Western States Endurance Run? That is such a community. What does the community mean to you and done for you?
You know, I mean, runners globally are kindred spirits. I am so comfortable around runners, and the community of runners is, like I said, it's globally. I mean, I've run in many countries where, you know, my skin color is different. You know, the God we worship is different. The language is different. The socioeconomic level is different. But when we run, we're one. We're united. And I love that about running. It's very democratic in that way. There's so many things in this world that divide us and tear us apart. But running is something that we have in common. It's a commonality across the human species. And when we run, we're one. So the community is tremendous. And runners universally are such, they're like you and me. They're such supportive and positive people. And they're warm-hearted, and they're giving and caring and empathetic. So I love our community.
Yeah, it's like we have this commonality and this common goal. And I like how you talk about that in your experiences running Western States, that it has become such an international event, and you're meeting people from all across the world kind of through, and you mentioned this in your book, you know, you don't know life unless you've suffered or pain. I mean, that's sort of a, I don't know, what is that? A Hindu ideology of, you know, we all have to suffer, something like Gandhi would say. I don't know if you could address that a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, there's a quote in the book, you know, there's magic in misery.
Yeah.
And I think every runner can relate to that, right? There's a point where it sucks. And you want to quit and you want to stop, and it's horrible. And when you get through it, it's magical. And I think that, you know, we thought in the Western world, if we had every convenience available to us, every comfort, we'd be happy. And in a lot of ways, we're so comfortable, we're miserable. And running makes you uncomfortable, and it hurts, and it makes you joyous.
I really like how you brought that out in the book. And then I think you talk about it's how we get to know thyself, you know, to know, what was your quote in the book? I wrote it down here. To know pain, to know thyself, one must push thyself.
Yeah, I mean, running is an outward journey, but it's an inward journey as well. We learn so much about ourselves through the movement of our bodies and the way we respond to situations that are difficult. And, if you just live life on an easy path, you don't really explore and learn about yourself because you're never faced with adversity, and nothing holds a mirror up to you quite like running, right? It's very obvious. Your time, if you're on pace, off pace, you know it. And when it hurts, you know it. And how do you respond on those moments? And I think that's how you learn about yourself. You see how you respond.
I always recall this quote from George Fraser, who was like one of the elder statesmen and philosophers in Tamalpa Runners. He used to say, "I've saved thousands of dollars in therapy bills through running."
Yeah.
We're a community.
Quote. I mean, my favorite quote is by Walt. Remember Walt Stack?
Of course.
Stack. I start slow and I taper from there.
Taper off. Yeah, right. Yeah, I've just been thinking about him because he was legendary around here for running across the Golden Gate Bridge, bare-chested, founder of the Double Dipsy. The Double Dipsy is named after Walt Stack. Yeah, swam Alcatraz numerous times. Yeah, running, it's a beautiful thing, and your book really captures it with like a philosopher's tone. I relate your writing to like George Sheehan from Runner's World, who was a real running philosopher. I mean, it's beautiful to see your story of Western states. Do you anticipate going back and doing Western states again? And when? Are you doing it this year?
Oh, no, I wish I was doing it this year. I absolutely anticipate, going back to Western states. And, I'd like to somehow compete with Diana and try to match her sub 24 at 60. So I've still got a couple of years ahead of me, but I have a lot more Western states in my legs. Just getting in on the lottery or, another way, that's the tough part. And, I know we're going to be at the river crossing, right? Like we are.
Yeah, Rocky Chucky.
Yeah, and I've been talking to, I think do you know Topher Gaylord?
I know Bruce Linscott.
Well, Topher's on the Western States board. He's a Kent guy, another good local runner.
Okay.
He's telling me about like the protocols for aid stations, because I was thinking about working at an aid station. I get my second shot next week, and so I'll have both my shots by then. But it's
right.
A different race this year, obviously.
The protocols for working at the aid stations, I did see that email that they want everyone to be vaccinated. Yep. And Tamalpa Runners, our running club, runs or hosts of aid station at Rucky Chucky, run by one of our club members, and we're planning on being there. And we'd love to have you there too.
Maybe I'll come up and join you guys. Yeah. I'll get in touch with you offline on that, but I'd love to work that aid station.
Sure.
You guys support me every time I come through there, so
And Tamalpa Runners also gets to vote. We'll talk offline about this, but we also get a vote on who we want to promote for the race for the following year.
Okay.
Do we want to are there any questions from YouTube members or anyone else that we want to take?
I think so. Yeah.
I'm not seeing anything in the group chat unless Nick is posting something in there.
No questions yet.
Okay, well, audience, if you have questions, fire away, and David and I are ready to go. But David, I want to ask you a question.
Please.
Have you ever done the quad dipsy?
Once, Dean, once. And it was the most excruciating pain I've ever felt in an ultra marathon. I'm not like you. I've done 50Ks. I haven't taken the step to a 50 miler, but I did the quad once, and the quad gives great swag. I got the orange fleece vest. I think it was the 25th annual quad, but I am thinking of going back and doing it again. Are you doing it this year?
I think so. Yeah, I think I want to. I have another event that I'm putting on called the Golden Gate Trail Classic. So I'm putting on an event in November that starts in San Francisco and comes up to Marin and then goes back. So it just depends if I can do enough training for both of those.
What's the distance of that?
I'm going to do the 100K. So there's a 100K, a 50K, a marathon, a 10K, and a 5K. And it starts at Chrissy Field, and you cross the Golden Gate Bridge, and you go up SCA Trail, and
awesome.
Yeah,
we are, for those people watching on YouTube who are not from Marin County, we are so blessed in this county where we live and in the Bay Area with the access to the open space through the Golden Gate recreation area, Mount Tamalpais State Park, Point Reyes National Seashore. We are very blessed. Looks like we have a question here from a viewer. And I kind of had that same question about those golden shoes in the background there.
Yeah, so, okay, can you see those? That, I ran across America one time. So I ran from LA to New York City, and it was with the Live with Regis and Kelly show. They were covering me the whole time. And when I got to their studio, the finish line was at their studio in New York City. And when I got there, they gave me those those are the shoes I wore.
Wow.
Those are bronze shoes.
Did you wear the same pair?
No, that was the last pair I wore. My pair, yeah.
So how many, like that begs the question, how many different pairs of shoes did you wear running across the country?
I think I wore maybe 5 or 6 pair, but what really went out on me were my socks.
Wow.
I went through a lot of socks. But you know what can you see these 2 things?
Uh-huh.
You know what they are?
What are they? I'm sorry?
They're Olympic torches. So I've carried the Olympic
Oh,
torch.
wow.
Yeah. And they let you keep the torch.
Were those when the Olympics was in the United States?
No, this one is from the 2008 games in Beijing, and I
Okay.
carried the torch in San Francisco. And then the white one next to it is from the 2018 Winter Games in South Korea.
Oh, that's
And
very cool.
I'm 100% Greek, so I carried the torch in Greece, which was really special.
That's awesome. That's very cool. So a couple more questions coming in. How exactly does a person do the 50, 50, 50 that you did? It seems so surreal.
It was fantastic. I mean, imagine traveling the whole country and running, getting to meet people and, sampling the local food and getting to run. But the way we worked it is, for those of you that know marathoning, I mean, almost always a marathon is on Saturday or Sunday. So, how do you show up in Dallas, Texas on Tuesday and run their marathon? So 8 of the marathons of the 50 were actual quote unquote live events. So I ran, like, for instance, the Chicago Marathon with 35,000 runners. I ran Marine Corps with 40,000 runners, and the final marathon was New York City, which I ran with 55,000 runners. 42 of the other races were quote unquote recreated marathons. So we contacted the race director for the most prominent marathon in that state, like in Iowa and Missouri and Illinois. And we said, well, not Illinois, that's Chicago, but some of the other states, we said, when we're in town, will you set up your official starting line and let us follow your sanctioned and certified course and finish at your official finish line, so that we had a record of actually running a marathon. And the race directors did that. So that's how we ran marathons on the weekdays.
And were your times like consistent? Are you running like 3-hour marathons? Were you running 3:30s, 2:20s? Were your times pretty consistent across the board?
No, they vary tremendously. In Mississippi, it was like 95 degrees and really humid. And I had permits for up to 50 people to join me on these marathons. So it wasn't just me.
Gotcha.
We had a big group show up.
Okay.
And unlike most marathons where they close the entire route, for 5 or 6 hours until everyone finishes, we just had like a police escort that took us through intersections. They closed down traffic lights as we ran through. So they needed us to stay together. And so inevitably, we kind of had to slow the pace down to the slowest runners, because the fast guys would just drop the slow runners, and then the police couldn't, close down the route for us. And so some races, were, I think my slowest was maybe 4:40 marathon.
Mm-hmm.
And, the last marathon I ran in 3 hours flat, the New York City Marathon.
Wow. That was that live with 40,000 other people?
Yeah.
Awesome. So another question from a reader is, thank you for your book. Do you have a particular cross-training regimen that you would credit for keeping you healthy and running for so many years? And that kind of ties into another question, is how do you avoid getting injured?
Yeah, well, my cross-training is primarily with body weight. So I have a routine of push-ups and pull-ups and chair dips, sit-ups, and something called burpees.
Mm-hmm.
So this routine it's HIIT training, high intensity interval training. And it's about a 12 to 14 minute routine. And I do maybe 5 or 6 of those throughout the course of the day. So just whenever I'm, in between emails or conference calls or Zoom calls or whatever, I'll bang out a set, and it really gets your heart rate elevated. And it's about 12 or 14 minutes in total. So that's what I do for, keeping my muscle mass up. I don't just run, I cross train like that, because I think just running is kind of a recipe for overuse injury. And, knock on wood, I've never had an injury. So I can't comment on what it feels like to be injured because I've never been injured. Some of that I think comes down to biomechanics. My alignment is really good for being a runner. Like I said, I'm 100% Greek, and there's a saying: the best thing you can do as a long distance runner is to choose your parents well. So I advise you to choose your parents.
What about do you do yoga or any stretching, or how do you think that helps or benefits running? And I find when I do yoga, it really helps, and I haven't done it in a while.
Yeah, I used to do Bikram, the hot yoga,
Uh-huh.
and I found that very beneficial. It's a good workout as well, and it's good heat training, and I thought it was amazing. There's a saying in yoga that yoga is good for running, but running isn't good for yoga.
Good for yoga. Yeah, right. I've heard that before.
Studios are closing, unfortunately, so I haven't been doing my yoga.
So another question from a viewer: how many miles per week do you typically run? Do you run every day? And maybe we should ask how many miles per month or per year, or do you have a lifetime total that's like kind of in the back of your head? You keep track.
Back of the napkin, it's probably somewhere around 100,000 miles, but I haven't kept a hard total. I don't even know how many marathons I've run. I think it's around 300, and I have boxes of medals in my garage. I mean, many boxes. And one day I'll go through and count them all, but I don't even know how many marathons I've run. I know I've run a couple hundred ultra marathons.
Do you use Strava? Do you have followers on Strava, or you would have a gazillion if you did? But tell me about your use of GPS for tracking and apps that you might use for running.
Yeah, I mean, I have Strava. I'm not real active on Strava. I was sponsored by Fitbit, so I use my Fitbit and their app to track all my runs.
Okay.
Sometimes I post them publicly, but mostly not. It sounds funny, but one of the reasons I moved to Marin is I started posting a lot about my routes in San Francisco, and I had people showing up on my doorstep. I mean, one time, I'll never forget. It was like 6 p.m. and we were getting ready to have dinner, and my daughter comes to me. She's like, "Daddy, there's a couple men at the door that want to talk to you." So I walked to the front door, and these two guys that graduated from college in the Midwest, and they were collegiate cross country runners, and they just looked like, "We got to run with Carno. Like that's on our list." And they drove all night to California and showed up on my doorstep at dinner time.
Yeah.
Slightly drunk.
Right.
But I mean, what do you do? I had to go running with it. I couldn't deny him that moment. So.
Well, we always love it when you show up on our Sunday runs, and I think you came out on a couple turkey trots when you show up, because when we figure, oh, there's a celebrity here. But we always appreciate seeing you out here. And I always like, if I see you around Marin running, I always honk or wave at you or something.
Yeah, it's a strong local community. I mean, I get people all the time like yelling at me out the window, and yeah, I always say, "Hand me food, will you?"
Yeah, right. Do you have any? Speaking of food, what is your choice of beverage or bar or gel on a long endurance run?
Yeah, I'm sponsored by Hammer Nutrition, so I use their products. They make this beverage, like a energy and recovery beverage called Perpetuum, and it's a little bit thicker than a normal, electrolyte replacement beverage. And I use that quite a bit because, they make gel as well, and I use their gels. But to me, you can only have so many gel packs before you kind of get sick of gel. I also like nuts.
I know that feeling.
Yeah, I mean, how many? I know guys that just race on gels for 100 miles.
Some of that stuff is really rich and it's delicious. I love that margarita sunrise goo. It's like wakes you up, but it can be very upsetting on the stomach.
Yeah, and I've been using a lot of nut butters. And I find those a little bit more settling on the stomach, and they satiate you for longer as well. They kind of hold your appetite over for longer. So
do you do salt tablets or Advil?
I don't do any anti-inflammatories, and I do Endurolites. It's a product by Hammer Nutrition. So it's a electrolyte replacement. It's, you know, sodium, potassium, calcium, and magnesium, and a little bit of ginger powder kind of for the stomach. It's a great product, electrolytes. Yeah.
So here's another question from a reader. From a viewer, sorry. Was your latest book difficult to write compared to the others you have written? And did you write this book during the pandemic? And I kind of want to ask you how that, you mentioned that at the end of the book. I don't want to spoil the book for anybody. It's a must read, but tell us about kind of the journey of writing this book.
Yeah, the journey was, you know, I guess I'm a kind of a serial memoirist. And what's the difference between a memoir and a autobiography or a biography? A biography or autobiography is kind of a picture of someone's entire life, where a memoir is kind of a snapshot in time. And this book literally, you know, it's over a 2-month period that I describe. Of course, there are flashbacks to different things I've done, but it's basically that block between May of 2018 to June of 2018, you know, with the Western states. And I didn't want to go too broad with this story because I wanted to get more intimate. And I think you kind of spoke to that. I wanted to get a little more heady on this one and a little more philosophical, and kind of delve into why we do this, and, you know, kind of uncover some truths there. So this book was a little more difficult in that regard because it wasn't just sheer storytelling. It was really, you know, searching for meaning in running and the lessons from running. And I wrote a lot of it while I was running. You know, I dictated in my phone when I run. And then when I was flying around the world, I would just put in earbuds and type up my notes. So that's how I wrote most of it. And most of it was completed before the pandemic, except for, as you read, the last chapter is about the cancellation of a race I was supposed to do here in Marin, the Miwok 100, 2020, and how at the last moment that got canceled. And that was the concluding chapter of the book.
And wasn't Western in 2020 was canceled, but so far it's looking positive, you know, that it's actually happening this year. It's great to see.
Yeah, I just wonder how many international participants can get over here.
Right. I understand there's a lot of international marathons starting to happen again, and like November 7th is almost International Marathon Day, with I think New York and LA, and isn't like Paris and London all on that same day?
Yeah, and you know, I still can't get my head around how they're going to do it, because I don't know if you've ever done any of the big marathons, you know, say like New York, you know, there's 200,000 people that go through the Javits Center, you know.
Right. I think they're reducing the number of entries, you know, from 40,000 to 25,000, but still.
Do they mail you your number, or, you know, are you still expecting to pick it up?
A lot of logistics still to be worked out. Let's look at another question here from Tammy Massey. You may have answered this one already. Here it is. Talk about the medals behind you. Are they all displayed in your house? You must have like a vault of medals in your house. And did your wife let you hang those all over? Also, what are the most meaningful? Yeah, which are the most meaningful? Which were some of the most meaningful marathons to you, or ultras to you?
Yeah, you know, I mean, you're seeing some of the medals, but like I said, I probably have 300 of them. Most of them are in the garage. I spared my family from just putting my medals all over. So, you know, one day I'll go through and count them. But, you know, the most meaningful to me, I would say, is the first time I did Western States, which was back in 1994. The Western States buckle from that year is pretty special. And I also did Badwater in 1995, the Badwater Ultra Marathon, which is a 135-mile foot race across Death Valley. And that race is pretty meaningful. But, you know, my favorite race medal is from a 10K, because I ran a 10K with my daughter, Alexandria, on her 10th birthday.
That's pretty special.
Yeah, that to me is, nothing will ever surpass that moment. Yeah, that was pretty good.
All right. Did you push the kids in the jog stroller? I did. I pushed my kid from about 6 months to 5 years. And when we got rid of the jog stroller, we both cried. Did you push the kids in a jog stroller?
My daughter was such a pain. She would not sleep sometimes. And the only way I could get her to go to sleep, the jog stroller. I mean, I can't tell you how many nights at 2 a.m. I'm in my pajamas and running shoes, pushing the jog stroller down the street. And it put her.
That's funny. Doing your wife a favor too. I'm sure you're doing your wife a big favor. Yeah, mine was the same. Was the jog stroller, maybe a little juice bottle, and a couple of Fig Newtons. After at least 1 mile or maybe 2, he'd be out cold. Yeah.
And my wife is a dentist, so I figured she shouldn't be sleep deprived. Like no one wants a sleep deprived dentist working on their cavities, right?
For sure. For sure. So this question kind of came into my mind late today because I was thinking back of my 4 decades of running. And you may have similar stories, but I've got some great stories of getting lost, of like having no idea where I am in Yosemite, or I was lost in Sedona, Arizona once, or even here in Point Reyes. You know, the fog comes in, you're out there running. Have I been here before? I think I've seen this before. You got some stories of ever getting lost in your runs? And what do you do?
Yeah, I've gotten lost many times, and I'll never forget a time I got lost in Greece. So I was in Greece running out in the countryside, and it started raining. A rainstorm moved in, and I came upon this building, and I'm like, okay, just go into this building and hang out until the rain passes. So I go in this building, and it ends up it's an olive press. Like they've got an olive press running, and I see a couple of Greek guys sitting there. And they motioned to me to go look at the olive oil that's coming out after the olives are pressed. And I'm looking at it. It's dark green when olive oil is first pressed. And the guy comes over to me and he just reaches his hand down in there and scoops up a handful of olive oil and holds it up to my mouth. And I didn't know what to do. Like I'm running, but I'm going to drink this olive oil. So I had a big gulp of olive oil, and it was amazing how well I ran after having the olive oil. So it really brought me to life, actually.
Could be onto something there.
Yeah.
Here's another question from someone. I've heard Dean has pizza delivered at certain street corners when doing long runs. You might not reveal these street corners. Do you still do that? How else do you fuel on those long runs? And I think you answered it with the olive oil, but
Well, I mean, I'll never live down that story. It was during the relay that you spoke about on the introduction. So I was out by Nicosia, which is out in West Marin, kind of in this backcountry location here where we live. And I'd run out of food. I didn't have a crew, but I had a credit card and a cell phone. So I ordered pizza and had him bring it to me. And I told them, don't slice it and make it with a really thin crust. And then when you delivered it to me, I rolled it into this big like Italian burrito. And I just mowed as I ran. I ate an entire pizza as I was running.
While you were running. That's pretty funny.
Good, yeah.
All right, and on the subject of pizza, are you prepared to defend your choice to order Hawaiian pizza? That's a very controversial order from Aaron Griffiths, who goes on to say, what was your most challenging 50K? Wondering if you have participated in the River of No Return event.
Wow, no, I like challenges, though. I'm gonna have to do some research on that one. And my most challenging 50K, boy, those kind of sprint distance races just don't challenge me.
Have you done a Grand Canyon?
No, I was being facetious. There's a 50K I did in Portugal that was unrelenting. It was climbing up the side of a mountain. It was not running. It was bushwhacking. And I probably bushwhacked for 55 or 60 miles. I got lost so many times. My GPS stopped working. And I just came out of the bush. I came to the finish line. I was just cut to ribbons. I was bleeding everywhere, but it was really fun.
And was there a lot of other people in a race like this?
There were a lot of starters. Let's put it that way. I don't know how many people finished. There weren't a lot of us in the post race when they did the awards.
Do you have a bucket list of events or maybe goals? Have you done a Grand Canyon crossing and back and forth, or a bucket list of things you want to do?
Yeah, I did rim to rim to rim when I was 13.
When you were 13. Wow.
Yeah,
So you can already check that one off then.
Got that one done, yeah. Yeah, I mean, there's so many things I want to do still, David. I'm hoping the world's going to open back up because I'm so ready to travel.
Yeah, likewise too. I think it will. I'm going to adjust my seat a little bit. I think it will. I think things will look better, but I agree. We're not out of this pandemic until the entire world is out of this pandemic. The United States is looking promising, and things are looking better here, especially in Marin and in California. and parts of the US, but right, the world has a long way to go.
Yeah, I was scheduled to run across Australia in July, and now it got moved back to August. So hopefully in August I'll get to run across Australia.
Hopefully. What are your thoughts about a 50K ever being part of an Olympic event? I mean, wasn't that one of the Olympics started in Greece? You can speak to that.
Yeah, it started in Greece, and not only that, the original marathon was actually an ultra marathon. My previous book was called The Road to Sparta, and it's about the Phidippides or Phidippides, the original Greek marathoner. He actually ran from Athens to Sparta, which is 153 miles, before running the marathon. So he ran to Sparta to recruit the Spartans into battle, then ran back to the Bay of Marathon where the Persians had invaded, and then ran that final marathon. So I think there should be an ultra marathon in the Olympics. There's a 50K race walk, but I think they should also have a run.
Have you run that Athens to Sparta and back? Have you done that run?
I have, yeah. It's called
That must be very meaningful to you.
It's a Spartathlon. It's an amazing race. It's really difficult. Needless to say.
What are some of your kind of tell us people? I'm a marathoner and I've done ultras, but what races should we put on our list to do someday that are like some of your favorites or like must do's, and you would highly recommend these ones to others?
The Big Sur Marathon.
Mm-hmm.
Hard to beat Big Sur Marathon. That's a really good marathon. If you can get into Western States, I mean, that's the original. It's the granddaddy of ultras. So Western States is pretty remarkable. There's a run that I do in a Greek island called Santorini. It's called the Santorini Experience. Santorini is a place that will stir your soul. The beauty is unmatched anywhere. I mean, I could go on. We could spend this whole interview talking about runs that I think people would enjoy.
Yeah, sounds spectacular. I would love to do some international marathons. Most of mine have just been around the US, but it sounds amazing. So in your 50 states, were there any that stood out in the United States that are like, wow, these are great, domestic marathons that people should do? Hawaii or Florida or Alaska? Where'd you run in Alaska?
I ran the Mayor's Midnight Marathon in Anchorage. And that's a good one. One that it was quite remarkable is called the Valley of Fire. It's in Nevada, and the Valley of Fire is about an hour drive outside of Las Vegas. And when the sun comes up, it hits the walls of the valley, and it gives off this illusion of fire.
Wow,
and
wow.
Really exotic. So Valley of Fire Marathon is one I definitely want to go back to.
Sounds spectacular. And those are some things I think, as we were talking about earlier, about how runners are so in touch with nature. And those are things you see the world, I think, from a different lens as a runner, especially if you're an early morning runner or even a late night runner under the stars. You when most people might be sleeping in bed or home on the couch, you get up early in the morning, you wake up with the world. That was one of the things I loved about running in Europe, is you smell the smells of Italy or France when you're running at 6 a.m. The bakeries and the patisseries are opening up. It just enlivens all the senses.
Yeah, I mean, every runner knows the feeling, and that's why we do it. It's magical.
It is, and your book has really inspired me to keep exploring and keep reflecting. Here's another couple more questions from our YouTube watchers. Where is your favorite run since the pandemic?
There's a saying, it's always best in your own backyard, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a route that well. I mean, it's from my house. I always run from my house. Like, I never drive to the start of a run. I always run to the start of a run. So from my house, I run to Phoenix Lake, and then basically up Eldridge to the top of Mount Tamalpais. And from there, I head over to Stinson Beach and grab a latte at the market, and then head back up the Dipsea and back over to my house.
And what is the distance on a run like that?
It's 32 miles.
32. Wow. And how much time do you give yourself for a run like that? Is that a 5-hour run, a 6-hour run, an 8-hour run?
On a good day, it's a 7-hour run. Because a good day, I enjoy it. I spent some time in Stinson Beach. Lately, it's been more like a 6-hour run, just because you can't really hang out in Stinson Beach with the pandemic the way you used to be able to.
Sure.
Now
Right.
I kind of get on the trail.
So another question. What's your favorite time to run? Are you a morning, midday, evening? Do you run, 2 in the morning?
It's funny. I run at all different times of the day just to keep it fresh. So sometimes I run early in the morning. Sometimes I run at noon. Other times I run at sunset. And I really like night running. So sometimes I head out at night.
Do you carry a flashlight at night when you're running?
Yeah, no, I wear a headlamp and I've got a handheld flashlight as well.
Do you have a preference for road or trail? This is a question from someone too.
Oh, the trail, without a doubt. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
I like running on the road, but to me, the trail I'd much rather run on the trail.
Likewise too. Do you have, close friends who are like, I'm gonna go running with Charlie, Saturday, we're gonna meet here? Do you have a group of people? I love it when you join us Tamalpans every now and then, but do you have like a family or a community of like, this is my group and I'll meet with them? Or would you say most of your runs are solo long distance runs?
Yeah, I'm pretty much a loner. So I do most of my running myself. I've got a couple friends that we get out every once in a while, but mostly, I used to see people all the time when I was traveling too. Like I was doing an event almost every weekend or every other weekend. So I'd inevitably be running with big groups. But with the pandemic, I've been running more and more by myself. I'm looking forward to getting back with people. In fact, I'm wearing can you see the Marin?
Oh, Marin Ultra Challenge. I did that. Yeah. I
Yeah.
love that run.
Muck is a good one. Yeah,
That's a good course.
great course. Yeah.
Down Marin Shallow, turn around, come back up, and then down Coastal Trail. If anyone knows Coastal Trail coming down to Rodeo Beach, how do you not cramp?
I thought you've never done a 50 mile or a 50K before.
I've done 50Ks.
Oh,
I've done
50Ks.
Cool Canyon plenty of times. I've done the Tamalpa Headlands plenty of times. But post-pandemic, that's one of my goals too, is to get back into my ultra running roots, possibly bump it up to a 50. It takes a lot of courage, which you have, Dean. Talk about the courage that it takes I'm a runner who runs 5-6 days a week, 40 miles a week. What does it take to bump it up to a 50 miler or 100 miler?
It's all up here, David.
It is all up there, isn't it?
Your body's got it. Your legs have got it. Everything. It's all up top.
Do you subscribe to the it's better to be undertrained than overtrained philosophy?
I should, because I'm perpetually overtrained. So it's a good reminder what you just said, and I'm gonna have to try that.
And I know your book kind of starts off with that anxiety as you're going into. Was it the Bishop 100K that you were doing?
Yeah, the Bishop 100K, and you're right. I was, my base mileage going into that was probably only around 40 miles a week, maybe 50. And as the book, as you learned in the book, I was on the lottery at the Western States and got waitlisted, and really wrote off getting in because no one's going to give up their ticket to Western States because it's so hard to get in these days. But my number started getting closer and closer, so I decided I better start training. And to train, I just ran 100K.
Wow. So we have a little bit of time left. Looks like maybe under 10 minutes, and I want to get to another viewer question here too. But I want to ask you how your family plays into who you are and your character as an ultra runner. And you said your wife, kicks you out the door sometime. And how supportive has your family and your parents too? They were a big part of this book as well, as was your son Nikolai.
Yeah, I think that no runner is an island, right? I mean, we don't run in a vacuum. Running inevitably impacts your partnerships and your family. And I wanted to tell that story. That's part of the narrative of this book, is how relationships change when one person starts running long distances. And I've seen relationships blown to smithereens when one partner started ultra marathoning, and I've seen relationships grow closer. Thankfully, my family grew closer through my running, and they've embraced it, and they've been very supportive, and I'm really fortunate in that regard. What about your family? Has it been the same way, or?
My family, if you're married to a runner and you're not a runner, you either become a runner or go a separate way. And so my family kind of became runners. And my wife, she is very multi-sport. She found tennis, but she loves running, and she has a group of women that she runs with. She calls her Trail Sisters. And we have one son, and he did 9 dipsies, and kind of called it quits after 9, but he's going to go back and do it again. He discovered golf, and you follow your children's passions, but he understands how important running is to a balanced life. And he's at Cal Poly now, and he's studying through the pandemic, as a lot of people's kids are. And it's so important that you get outside. I mean, I spent all day in my classroom, but I ran this morning at 6 a.m. up a Queenstone. I don't know if you ever run up there in Marinwood, up Chicken Shack, Fire Road, and Blackstone Canyon. That's great hills for you. But anyway, it was just rejuvenating and sets my day off on such a great start. My family has been very supportive of my running. My wife is like, "You're calmer after you've run." I just reflect on either the day I have ahead of me, or maybe what I could have done better during the day if I'm running in the afternoon. What mistakes did I make during the day? Maybe I said something to somebody the wrong way, or they took it the wrong way. It's such a great reflective sport.
It's therapy. And your son's a Mustang. I went to Cal.
As you were too, right?
Yeah.
Have you done the there's a, what do they call it? The Tri-Tip Challenge. Dean, are you familiar with that?
Yeah, at McClintock's, right?
Well, it's my understanding, and I did it with one of my son's fraternity brothers down there. The Tri-Tip Challenge is you run up to the P at Cal Poly, then you run up Mount Madonna to the top of Mount Madonna, then you come down, and then you go up Bishop's Peak, and then you finish at what's the name of the brewery? The Freestone Brewery or Firestone Brewery,
Yeah.
and get a Tri-Tip sandwich.
Okay. Yeah, I wasn't a runner when I went to Cal Poly, but McClintock's is like the big restaurant in town. And
Yeah.
like, if you can finish their tri-tip steak, you get like
I think that was it. It was McClintock's. I think so.
40-ounce steak or something. Yeah.
Here's another question. Speaking of eating and food, have you ever encountered wildlife in a dangerous situation?
Many times, yeah. I mean, I was face to face with a bear during Western states. I read about it in the book, actually, now that I remember. When I was running across America, I remember I was in the Ozark Mountains. It was really hot and humid, and it was, the road was like covered with overgrowth, and I ran into a branch. Like, I was kind of glancing sideways, and I hit a branch, and I realized it wasn't a branch, it was a snake that was hanging from the tree.
Wow, goodness. Scare me. That would scare me to death. I ran in Yellowstone once, and I remember the ranger told me, "Don't run on the trails by yourself. Grizzly bears will get you." So I said, "All right, I'll run on the road." So I ran on the road, and on the road, I came across a giant grizzly bear right on the road. So we don't have too much time left, but I had one last question, and then I'll turn it back to our moderators. If your book was made into a Hollywood movie, and with the Academy Awards just out, I have an idea who I think would play you. But who do you think would play you?
Oh, they better be a runner. That's all I can say. But no, I'm curious. Who do you think it would be?
Well, I was thinking of like Matt Damon from, in his role in as on Mars as the Martian. He had to just survive in the elements.
Yeah, Matt Damon is getting fat. I hope he's not listening to me.
I think he lost weight for that role.
I want him to trim up. And I heard he eats a lot of junk food. Like, I don't like that. I mean, I love the guy, but I wish he would change those things. But, and in closing, I know we're almost done, but thank you everyone for joining, and please support your local independent booksellers. Book Passage is wonderful. I've launched all of my books, all 5 of my books at Book Passage. Great people, great store, and they are keeping the spirit alive. So please support them.
Thank you so much. Thank both of you. This was wonderful and such amazing tips, Dean. I hope everybody took notes and wrote that down, all the things you suggested. If not, you can see it again on Zoom, so you can look it up anytime. And, look out for Dean when you're running some of those trails. I don't recommend you do what those boys did and go up to his house. That's a little too stalkerish, but look for him and David on the trails. And as I said, please buy your book through Book Passage. You can call the store and order it. You can order it online. You can come in. We're open 10 to 5 every day, and you can browse and pick up his book. thank you all for being here and watching, and good advice about eating healthy, staying healthy. I know that when I get out in nature and hike, it's really more mentally, more for my mental state than physical almost. So everybody get out there and stay safe. And thank you both so much for being part of this.
Thank you. And thank you, David. It was great. It was great connecting with
Great
you.
talking with you too, Dean. Looking forward to seeing you and running with you again.
Yeah.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Good night, everyone.